All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Dungan-Mott Music and Movie Podcast. I'm Devin Dunnigan, and here with me, as always, is Mr. Stephen Mott. How you doing, brother?
Look at here, man. I'm doing great. Um, we're here on Podcast Bean Network. I'm just kidding. Um, the Devin Dunnigan Music and Movie Podcast. Um, with Stephen Mott. So yeah. This is gonna be a great, tremendously of a great album and a great episode because it's not an album and it's not an episode. It's a Halloween marathon. It's what it is. So, bye.
All righty, so today we are back, and this is going to be another kind of a departure from the normal album reviews and stuff like that. This is what I'm going to call the worst of Halloween, or the top five worst Halloween movies. So there's overall 13 films in the Halloween franchise. So you got Halloween, Halloween 2, Halloween 3, Halloween 4, 5, 6, and H2O Resurrection, the two Rob Zombie films, and then the more recent three David Gordon Green movies. So a lot of peaks and valleys with this series. My particular list is probably going to be a little bit more different. I'm just going to go ahead and say that because there are a lot of Halloween films that people hate that I actually really, really enjoy. And there are a lot of Halloween films that people love that I'm not the biggest fan of. And I'll go ahead and say I hate the original movie. I hate it. It's the worst Halloween film of all time. Of course, just kidding. But either way, the way I've got the list here is just what I consider the five worst Halloween films. The way I put this together, so majority of these are what I consider the worst. There is one that I kind of somewhat give it a little bit based on the fan perception of this particular movie, and that's kind of where I'll leave it. And then I do also have one honorable mention. So, Stephen, I know you've seen, I think, majority of these movies, or you at least know somewhat about all of them pretty much, or most of them. I know at least three that you've seen in the theater, and two of those that you actually saw with me, spoiler alert. And yeah, we'll get into it here in just a second. But I think the way we're going to kind of do this is I'll name the movie because this is my list. He didn't make a list. I only made a list. So I'll read each one off my list. I'll talk about why I feel the way I do, and I'll pass it over to Steve, and he can kind of give his thoughts if he's even seen the movie before, this, that, and the other thing. So yeah, if you're ready, Steve, we'll go ahead and get into it.
Yes, I'm ready for the chase.
All righty, so I'm going to start out, and I'm going to kind of give an honorable mention, and people are probably going to think I'm crazy for this, but I'm going to go with Halloween 2018. So this movie had a lot of hype going with it. And when it came out, I was supposed to go to the theater to see it and all, and it didn't happen. A lot of things fell through. I was supposed to go with a bunch of people to see it. Those bunch of people never ended up going, so I ended up having to basically find it in other places to watch it. And I'm not going to get into that here, but I did end up watching it. I liked it, but it wasn't the movie that I thought it was going to be. I thought there were a lot of good ideas with it. But going back and watching this movie, I'm really not a big fan of this. And to be honest, I'm not a big fan of modern movies in general. And this kind of falls in there. Like, there's a certain thing about a lot of modern movies, and not to say that I dislike every modern movie that comes out. I mean, I like the previous two Scream movies. I liked the Batman 2022. That's three right off the top of my head. I've seen some others. X, which that I know that was a period piece, so that's kind of few and far between. But this kind of has that modern look and style and feel to it, style, whatever you want to call it. I like a lot of things about it, but it feels like it was cobbled together from a whole other movie. And I do know that there was supposedly this very disastrous test screening, and they had to basically go back and re-edit the entire movie. I think if I would have seen the original edit of the movie, I think I may actually like it more. That's the thing about it. Like, what most people consider to be great Halloween movies, when I see an alternate cut, 9 out of 10, I like that better than a lot of the other cuts. And this would probably be one of those. And for instance, like I'll just name one right off the top of my head, Halloween 2007 Work Print. To me, that's the best cut of the movie. I think that flows the best of the three cuts that's out there. I think that the theatrical and unrated cut, the endings are way too long. And I think that could have been shaved down quite a bit. I think everything kind of fit perfectly with the work print. And Halloween 6, that's a whole other story. So I'm going ahead and kind of spoiling some of this. Those are not movies that are on here. So, Steven, you saw Halloween 2018. Do you remember any of it? What do you think of the movie looking back, whatever the case may be?
Well, I remember seeing it in the theater of the Halloween 2018, and I remember thinking it was just. I mean, what struck me the most was that it was. I feel like it was trying to be edgy. I don't know if that makes any sense to you know to somebody, but I guess that's the thing that came across to me. They were trying to to kind of have that thing like Rob Zombie, I guess. That was kind of edgy and kind of starting off the movie with some certain comments that I'm not gonna really say again on here. But there were some interesting comments, to say the least. Um, but I just kind of got that vibe, and also that it was just different. And I remember there was just kind of, like I said, just kind of, that's the only thing I could come up with, like just edginess and just kind of like off the wallness to it that maybe the films before that didn't have, and the ones that came after that, I feel like didn't have that as much. It just kind of flowed a little bit, smoother. But this movie, it seemed like they were trying to maybe drop some bombshells with it and just kind of really get the series back going, because they had in mind they were going to come with some more later on. Not very much after that. They had it in mind, and obviously some things went down that probably kind of put that back some, but that I'm not going to talk about on here. But I mean, it's just I feel like that's what they were trying to do. After a long time, they were trying to renew people's interest in it and trying to really create a storyline for the next movies to come, maybe. So that's my best idea with that.
Alrighty, so that is, of course, my honorable mention. Now let's get into the actual list. So this first one here, my number 5, I'm going to kind of take some liberties here. I'm going to give kind of a benefit of the doubt. And there's a couple of movies on this list that I wouldn't absolutely say that I hate, but to say they're good or great is a totally different story. But this movie I did like. So Halloween Ends. I kind of throw this one on here for the exact reason of just how polarizing. I mean, I also think the placement of this movie in this last trilogy is completely wrong. Like, I think this should have been the first movie. So this should have been in the place of 2018 and then built up to the events of what happens in 2018. And then the last movie's kills, and then you end up killing Michael Myers off, whatever you want to do. But I just think that there were a lot of off the wall ideas that I respect, but I just think the where it sits in the trilogy itself is completely wrong. And I think for this to be called Halloween Ends, this is not a very good conclusion to the franchise for what they were doing at the time. I think Halloween Kills probably would have been a much better conclusion. And I like the movie overall. I've only ever seen it the one time in the theater, and I was pleasantly surprised with it or satisfied with it, whatever you want to say there. I like the movie. I need to go back and revisit it. But with that all being said, I do put it as one of the worst in the franchise, basically because of a lot of things that it did and kind of pulled out of its tail all of a sudden. And that's, of course, probably not the phrase I would generally use to say that. But here with the podcast we're doing, that's kind of where I'm going to leave it. So, Stephen, what did you think of Halloween Ends? I know we saw this movie together, me, you, and our former co-host on DTM, Pete. We all saw this movie, and I came out of the movie liking it. I don't think you did, but you go ahead and get into it.
Well, so I mean, Halloween Ends. I think that the other two cohorts of mine there had kind of an opposite opinion with the two movies. I kind of categorize Kills and Ends in the same sort of category, so I kind of categorize them together, just because I guess they were kind of close together in their release times. But to me, Ends was not. I mean, to me, Kills was better because it was kind of more true to what a Halloween movie in my mind should be. Um, that's just my IMO, but in my opinion, but Ends was seemed more like a teenage type movie, like more like a teenage drama type movie. You know, I think they were trying to go towards that direction because there's so many of these newer, you know, shows like Netflix shows, stuff like that, that's based around teenage, you know, drama, teenage, blah blah blah. You know, so that's what they kind of went towards with this movie. I feel like that's what they wanted to, you know, maybe capture that audience. But I just I just think they went a little too far out with the idea of the whole, you know, just the whole idea of the movie was just, it's like they took the some of the whole ideas of Halloween and they're taking and putting a whole new twist on it. And it's just kind of weird to me. Like, I think they could have stayed a little bit truer to the way it was, but what they're basically doing is from 2018 on to Ends. It's like they just trying to take and completely change the storyline, and in a way it's good and in a way it's bad. To me, it's more bad because it depends on how you look at it. But really, what I'm trying to say is Ends to me was not a Halloween film. because it just had too it was too focused on the drama side of it versus the horror side of it. But that's just me. So back to you.
All right, so I do agree with every point you pretty much made, but I do still like the movie. But it's definitely to me bottom of the barrel. I do consider this. I'll go ahead and kind of spoil it, but I mean we reviewed Kills here on the channel, so I didn't like Kills much at all, and I'll get to that here in a few minutes. But I did think this was the best of the trilogy, so it's kind of a give or take situation there. I mean, yeah, that's kind of where we stand. So number 4, I'm gonna go with Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. So I used to really, really love this movie. Going back and watching it now, every time I watch it, the less I like it. I think it's kind of a shoddily made movie. I know a lot of people love this movie, and if you love it, I'm happy that you do. I like the movie for what it is, but I think there's some outright bad writing in the movie. The mask is terrible, and I just think it feels a bit too rushed. I respect the fact that they tried to go back to the original kind of tonally and the way it looks and all. It's definitely back to that kind of lower budget feel of the first one. And there are things I love about it, like Donald Pleasance. I thought he was a great actor, the heart and soul of the Halloween franchise. And when he passed away, a huge hole has been left in the franchise. And I thought they had come close to filling that hole when they brought in the Sartain character in Halloween 2018, but then you see that switch at the end of that movie where he becomes a guy trying to basically push Michael out there to get him to kill again, and he's obsessed with seeing Michael Myers kill. So yeah, I thought there was potential with that storyline, and it was kind of ruined by the end of the movie. Even though I kind of was okay with that twist, it was kind of interesting and different. But yeah, Halloween 4, I respect a lot of elements for it, and I guess that's the reason I'm going to call this episode more of the worst of Halloween instead of my top 5 worst movies, because I do like some of these, and I like some things about a lot of these. But if I had to think right off the top of my head of 5 movies that I consider the lower tier Halloween movies, this would be it. Not that I consider them all bad, but at the same time, like, they're not that good either. So yeah, that's definitely what I will title this video, is the worst of Halloween. But I digress. So that's pretty much all I've got to say. Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, 1988. I like it. I respect it. But it is not a great movie. There's a lot of very, very bad things in it. So, Steven, have you seen Halloween 4, and what do you think of Halloween 4?
The main thing I remember, I think, if I remember correctly, it was 4 and 5 that I watched at one point when they had it on YouTube, and it may even still be on there. But I think that's the only time I've watched those movies, and I have watched them, but it's been a minute ago. And the thing is like I still consider those movies to be, in my opinion, better than Ends and Kills. But that's just me, because I think the older school movies like that are just better or more true to the Halloween horror film, the idea of a horror film. Um, you know, and just to say an example, like the new Texas Chainsaw movie or whatever. I can't even remember what it's called, to tell you the truth exactly. But it's just, to me, that's a pretty good movie. because it's kind of still based around the right principles, but like the newer Halloweens aren't as much. Kills was a lot closer. So I really like 4 because, like you said, 5 was just kind of, I guess, they were kind of trying to take advantage of the success or whatever, kind of, one of those type situations, I guess. And that usually turns out to be kind of bad. But in this case, I don't think it turned out that bad. I think both movies were pretty good and pretty decent, especially compared to the new stuff. So, yes.
All right. So speaking of that, my number 3 here, Halloween 5. So I generally like Halloween 5. I do. I think it's a while I think Halloween 4 is more closer to the original. Is it wrong for me to say I think Halloween 5 is a better movie, a more fun movie than Halloween 4? I think I like the mask in Halloween 5, even though it's kind of terrible because it looks like the how was it compared before? Like it was the picture in it's called American Gothic. The picture of it's the farmer and his wife standing in front of the house or whatever. Like that they compare it to that picture. I I generally like this movie for what it is, but they took a lot of liberties with this film. And I know there's the stories of how there was no real finished script when they started shooting this movie, so it was kind of all over the place. At least I believe it was this movie. I'm pretty sure it was. I don't even think there was a finished script when they went into this film. And they originally had a different opening, and there was a lot more going on there. And Michael, there was a lot more to do with the whole cult of Thorn and the Thorn symbol and all that ends up being explored in Halloween 6. I just think that they rushed this movie out too soon, and it didn't do as well as Halloween 4, and that's the reason they took like 6 years to make another one with Halloween 6. But I like the film, but it's definitely one of the lesser movies in the franchise, just basically because even though I like the mask is kind of bad for Michael Myers. I kind of get what they were going for, and they were trying to make it fit more with Don Shanks' appearance. And I like some of the other stuff. Like Donald Pleasance is insane in the movie. I love Donald Pleasance in the movie. I think he's by far the best part. I think Daniel Harris as a child actor was really, really good in the movie, but the whole mute storyline was complete crap. Uh, the Tina character was very, very aggravating and very just not a very well written character. I just think there's some good things about this movie. I thought the kills and stuff like that were really, really good in the movie. I thought it was very brutal. And I especially like when he has the scythe toward the end when they're out in the barn at the farm party and all. That was really, really cool. Seeing Michael with that kind of a weapon was interesting, but I have to kind of throw this one in the lesser category just because of a lot of the liberties that they took with this movie, and I mean not making the best that they could. I think following up Halloween 4, they shouldn't have tried to do it less than a year after the previous movie. And I mean, this movie probably should have came out like 1990, 1991, something like that. But then you have to look at, well, the slasher genre was already on a decline when this movie come out, because this same year you had Elm Street 5, Friday the 13th Part 8, and then this movie, and none of those 3 movies did that well at the box office. So yeah, the slasher genre was kind of dead in the water by that point. But that's kind of why I put it there. I think it was kind of going in the direction of not feeling like a Halloween movie. At least Halloween 4 felt like the first one, and that's the reason I put it where I do. But I do have more fun with this movie, and I like some of the decisions that they made. I thought it was interesting that they did try to give Michael Myers kind of a motive, and yet they didn't explore it, and they just threw a lot of random crap in, like the Man in Black's a whole other story. If we ever talk about Halloween 6 or something, we'll talk about that. But either way, Steven, I mean, you've talked about it a little bit. Do you have any other things to add to Halloween 5?
Well, I just don't know. Thing with number 3, Halloween 5. Um, I kind of think of 4 and 5 in the same category, kind of the same way I do kills and ends. Because of the fact that they were kind of right after each other, they were close together, and they kind of in the same vein in my mind of each other. And then in the sense that kind of ends was, I guess, a spawn off of kills, but the difference to me is ends was a lot different than kills, a lot different, and it was like night and day to me. But 4 and 5 was really like kind of one movie just went right into the next. I mean, that's just the way I think about it. But I mean, from kills to ends, it's like night and day, like two completely different just storylines, two completely different things. You got new different you got the same people, but you got different storylines somehow. I mean, it's just weird, man. But that's just the main difference there. 4 to 5 was not. I mean, just like a continuation. So back to you.
Alrighty, so speaking of Halloween Kills, number 2 is Halloween Kills. So this movie, I can really not defend much. This is pretty bottom of the barrel. There's not much I like about this movie. I think tonally it is a complete train wreck. They basically bring the old characters back to immediately kill them off. Like when they bring Marion back, who was in the first 2 movies, and then she came back in H2O, they kill her off pretty much as soon as she's introduced. Like that, she's killed in that horrible freaking SUV massacre. That was terrible. Then you have just some bad writing. They're trying too hard with the comedic stuff with this one. I get that it was kind of like a tribute to the 80s slasher movies, and with that, I'm okay with the whole entire thing. But it's just, there's so much potential with this movie, and it just goes straight out the window. With that said, I think this is a better made movie than Halloween 2018. I think this movie feels more coherent than that of Halloween 2018. I think that Halloween 2018, as I said, felt like it was cobbled together. This felt more like they were trying to make a movie like this and were able to make a movie like they did. So with that, I'm like, okay, I give it a little bit of merit, but the writing is terrible in this movie. Jamie Lee Curtis she's given nothing to do. I thought it was interesting that they killed off the daughter at the end of it. I thought that was a ballsy move. But then you have all of these people that basically form a lynch mob to kill Michael Myers, and nothing happens. Like they're killed off. They make the dumbest decision ever after striking him down. They basically turn around and just almost walk off, and he comes back and kills every one of them. Like it's ridiculous. This movie I'm not a fan of at all. I think this is one of the absolute worst horror movies of all time. One of the absolute worst movies I have ever seen. I remember the theater experience, walking out of this movie saying, "What in the heck did I just watch?" And it's one I haven't seen in a while. Maybe I need to go back to it and watch it again. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, this is just not good. But people love it. There are people out there that love this movie and consider this one of the greatest Halloween movies ever made. But I'm not. I mean, if you look on Rotten Tomatoes, like the critic score is bad, but the audience score is moderately decent. It's like it's the popcorn standing up instead of the popcorn flipped over or whatever. So I I have to give it that. It has its fans, and a lot of people really love it. Not me. I'm not a big fan of this one at all. I do think the special effects are really good, though. I thought Christopher Nelson did a really, really good job on the special effects. That looks good. And then you get into like the extended cut also with that, which has some extended gore, which is actually really, really good. But then there's added scenes that make no sense whatsoever. So with that said, Stephen, I remember you liked this one quite a bit coming out of the theater. So looking back now, what do you think of it?
Personally, I like Kills a good bit better than Ends. I mean, like I said, it was just like a night and day difference from Kills. I mean, from Ends, I'm getting it mixed up, but like just I mean, I just don't know how they. It's like maybe it was received so poorly. Kills was received bad, I guess, and they thought, okay, with Ends, maybe we can turn around and maybe go in a different direction. And boy, did they! It was like a big different direction change, And I'm just, I'm just really kind of, I'm just expecting this to happen here in the near future. They're going to come out with a box set and charge an exorbitant amount of money for it, and then just post it online, and then just release it to the public as something that's never been released before, and it just winds up being the same movies. And I'm telling you, it's going to happen because that's the way and that's the chase. So that's my random tip of the day. And so basically, Kills was just really, it was just kind of more of a film that they wanted to be. I feel like toward the old school way. The idea behind it was to try to be like the earlier films, and just kind of a constant. It wasn't focused on drama like Ends and all that. It wasn't, focused on, like anything but just pretty much Michael just, you know, going around and just the chase of Michael. And to me, it was kind of like some of the earlier type films. And that's why I liked it better. It may have been corny at times, the kills might have been kind of silly to watch, but and very majorly unrealistic. But I remember the most funny thing that stuck out to us at the time was the particular kill where they open. I don't remember exactly, but I think they opened the door or something, and when the woman shot a gun, the door got slammed onto the gun and it turned around and she shot herself or something. I mean, like, it's just corny stuff that in the earlier films wouldn't be in that film. It's like they just kind of they went the route of off the wallness versus realistic wise, and I don't know. That's just me. So bye.
All righty, and I will say one thing also before we move on. All three of these movies have amazing soundtracks that John Carpenter and his son and all did. So I have to give these movies a lot of their due for the soundtracks. I do think the soundtracks are actually really, really solid, and I need to pick them up on CD. They're out there. I just need to pick them up and listen. I need to listen all the way through to them. I remember listening to parts of them and really, really enjoying them. So that's number two. Number one. I could kind of flip flop number 2 and number 1 at any point in time. At one time, the number 2 was number 1, but I'm going to go with number 1, Halloween Resurrection. Huh. Man, what a piece of crap this film. This is terrible. There's not much here I like with this movie. I have to say the one small amount of enjoyment that I get is Busta Rhymes. I thought he was entertaining and funny, but it's just like Mustafa Khat always said he didn't want to make Michael Myers like a joke, and this is like kind of doing that in some ways. And this derailed the franchise. I mean, you didn't get another movie until 5 years later with 2007, and they tried to follow this movie up. But this is a movie also that I think was majorly screwed over by the studio. There's like a couple of different work prints that exist. I've never seen either one of them, but I'm pretty sure they're probably better than the final cut of the movie. And I know it was originally called Halloween the Homecoming or Halloween Homecoming, and it was basically going to follow Michael Myers' return to Haddonfield. And then they changed it to Resurrection because they wanted something that said, oh, Michael Myers is back. Because if you remember, they killed Michael Myers off at the end of Halloween H2O. He was definitively supposed to be dead, but then right then and there, they were like, we can't kill Michael Myers. Like, there's too much money to be made. So then they said, well, we'll just bring him back, have him swap uniforms with this ambulance driver, crush the guy's larynx where he can't hardly speak. And it's pretty unbelievable that that would have happened. Like, the guy wouldn't have tried to get her attention. I guess in the moment, maybe she was so traumatized that she really wasn't paying enough of attention. She just saw the mask and thought it was Michael. But either way, this movie is just not good. I don't like the kids that they have in this, the college kids that's in the house. All of them are pretty unlikable. I mean, Bianca Kylick, she's an okay actress, but she's not the greatest in the world. And you have that freaking stupid character, Deckard. Like, there's no real good kill scenes in this movie. I just think this movie is all over the place and just very, very bland and very straight to video. Very straight to video esque, almost as straight to video as. But this movie, it's the worst by far, bottom of the barrel. I know some people have fun with it. I used to. I remember the first time I watched this, I was like, this isn't as bad as a lot of people say. But, and I mean, maybe depending on the mood that I'm in, maybe I would like it. But yeah, not a huge fan of this movie at all. So that's pretty much to the extent of what I have to say about this franchise on the lesser end of it, at least. And this movie, I do like the cover art. The cover art's okay. So, and you've got that. But that's pretty much it. So, Steven, what do you think of Halloween Resurrection? I think you've seen this one, or at least parts of it. So, Steven.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking, or what their just what their process was for coming up with the idea of this film, and why they thought. I guess the reason they thought it might do okay is because of some of the comedy stuff in it, or whatever. Like you said, making a joke out of it or whatever. But it's just like the thing is, it's just kind of pointless. It's just from a bunch of different, camera angles, and it's just there's no flow to it at all. There's no direction. There's really no storyline. It's just kind of just hodgepodge all over the place crap. I mean, I mean, they'll let something like that release, but they'll let something like Another Ticket release. So that's just a little plug to go watch our last episode. Ha! So, but the thing is it sucks, and I just I just don't know. That's the bottom line. Um, so basically, if they were to make a new movie of Halloween, I would want it to be opposite of this movie. So bye.
Alrighty, so that's it. That is the list here. So I do want to briefly talk about where the franchise is going to go now, because I mean they finished the David Gordon Green trilogy, the Blumhouse trilogy, whatever you want to call it. That's done and over with. They've done said they're not making another Blumhouse related Halloween movie. I think it was late last year or in the middle of last year one. Everything just runs together so much. But it had came out that there was a bidding war between A24 and Miramax to get the rights to the franchise to carry them on and make movies or whatever else. It has been said now that Miramax, well, since Miramax won the bidding war and all, it has been said now that the franchise will now move into TV. And they put out a little bit of a sort of brief synopsis saying that it was going to be a complete creative reboot going back to the original. Now, I don't know if it's going to be like a remake that's going to be more in the vein of the original, or if it's actually going back and it's going to be a sequel to the original. Either way, I think that's an interesting thing to do, but at the same time, I'm like, it's already been done. What I would personally like to see, go back to the original, but do period pieces. So go into the 80s, then go into the 90s, then go into the early 2000s. So you get kind of this different, kind of a different feel for each Halloween. And so you get like the 80s pop, polished feel, get a good soundtrack going in there with some of the hits from that time. Then go into the 90s, get some grunge in there, have the fashions of that time. Then go into 2000s, have some new metal and kind of the stuff that was going on at that time, some hip hop, stuff like that. That's what I would love to see. And if that, maybe that's what they'll do with this new TV show, I'll watch it for sure. I am a mark for Halloween. I love the franchise. Even though I've definitely grown to dislike some of the movies as I've talked about here, I'm interested to see what they've got. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I know Miramax, everybody was kind of like, well, okay, Miramax has got it. Miramax has had it for several years, since the mid 90s. So it's nothing really that new, because I know Dimension and Miramax, that Dimension was basically a genre. I don't know what you would call a subsidiary. That's the word I'm looking for. It was basically a subsidiary of Miramax for genre movies like horror and stuff like that. So Miramax has had the rights to the franchise for a while, so it was really nothing new when they won the bidding war. And I would have been interested to see A24 get the franchise and just see what they could do with it. But I know there was the whole thing floating around for a while where it was, oh, it's going to be a sequel to Halloween 3. It's going to be more on in the anthology route. I immediately saw Mustafa or Maleka Codnall saying, this is not what this is going to be. That's out of the question pretty much. So this is going to be Michael Myers. I remember seeing something as well where it's going to be like a cinematic universe. So it's going to be movies along with the TV show, which is going to be interesting. So, Stephen, I'll pass it off to you. What's your take on this Halloween TV show that's coming out? I'm assuming pretty soon.
Well, my take on it is, I mean, I think it's some part of me says it's kind of silly to do a series, and I don't know. I think it's kind of a silly move. I think they should just keep making movies. I think they're just going all these different directions, and they're trying to extend it out, and it's like beating a dead horse to a certain extent to me. And I mean, they can make new movies and stuff, but I think that's just taking it kind of too far, like beating a dead gorilla. So bye.
All righty. So, yeah, that's it. That is the podcast, another episode of the podcast. So, we've got a lot of episodes coming very, very soon. I'll kind of go ahead and talk about the plans for the show going forward. We're going to start trying to move some of the older episodes to the channel that we're on now on YouTube. We're going to kind of get some a little at a time, maybe upload a couple a month is what we've talked about, sort of. Some of them are going to be re-edited because a lot of those earlier episodes were kind of rough at times, especially that first episode we did of Derek the Dominoes. That was pretty freaking rough. And I know the audio was not the greatest in the world with that episode either. I think there's some work that's going to be done with that episode before we re-release it. It's up here on this channel, actually, but it's the uncut version. But I think if we edited the episode, I may delete that version and just keep the new version up whenever it happens. But we're going to start doing that. Of course, we're going to have episodes coming out here and there. This channel is going to be a complete mix of things. We're going to have movie reviews, movie commentaries, music reviews, the lists that we've been doing, stuff like this here, going through like the top 5 worst Halloween movies or the worst of Halloween, whatever you want to say. So, I mean, it's going to be a bunch of different stuff, kind of a melting pot of various things with media and stuff like that. And then I'll have my own channel. I'll attempt to bring it back pretty soon. I'm looking forward to that. And it's a new channel called Serious Cinema, Serious Music. And it's already up, but I'm not really going to put it out there right now because it's not really ready to be introduced to everyone or set up yet. So it's already on YouTube, but just not with any content. So that's all I have to say. Steven, you got anything else to add?
Yeah. So basically, they're going to come out with this box set called the Golden Ticket Bass, and it's going to have all the Texas Brothers albums in one place, including live at the Mystic Las Vegas. So that was one of our better live shows.
God bless you all. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay free, stay frosty, and I don't really have anything else other to say than that. So, as I always say at the end of these episodes, see you next time.